Hey y'all, what's up? So it is your girl Sunray coming at you guys with a prophetic word. Originally this was just gonna be a conversation, but I know this is a prophetic word because this is going to serve as confirmation for someone. And I'm making that face because I just remembered there's another video I have to make, but whatever. Y'all like my PJs? When I went in, they didn't really have many left, but I seen this black and pink combo. I said, oh, and it was the last, like it's giving sleepover. Come on in, okay? Come on in and chill with your big sis Sunray, all right? But God had to remove them, okay? And so today we're gonna be talking about elevation, okay? We're gonna be talking about elevation. When you enter a season of restoration in your life where God begins to restore things, heal things, transform things, when you enter that season, it's as if God takes the remote control and speeds things up. And God is restoring things because it's accompanied by speed. He does things quickly. It's all of a sudden things just happen so much quicker than they would before in the past. And I know a lot of you guys can attest to the fact that you've had people removed from your life before, but it was like a process. I'm speaking to those people where this past season, and I'm talking about within the last 3 to 4 months, God has removed people and it's like this. One day they're there, the next they're gone, like a ghost. And so I wanted to encourage someone today that may be struggling with understanding why God had to make that person leave, like why God had to remove them from your life. When we speak about elevation, we speak about obviously ascending and going to a higher level, going somewhere that oftentimes you've never been before. And back in July, God had me release a word speaking about he was giving his children hinds feet. That was a word I released through the devotionals. And so when God gives us hinds feet, he gives us hinds feet, which encourages us to, not encourages us, but which enables us to stand firm on higher ground. Because I don't know if you guys know, physiologically, your body goes abrupt changes when you shift from one elevation to the next. And when I say elevation, I mean like height wise, right? Like, how you ever go somewhere and you're like, oh, the elevation here is higher. Because I don't know if you guys know, it's harder to breathe at higher elevations, which is why when people go climbing and mountain climbing and stuff, they have to pace themselves because their body is undergoing physiological changes. I mean, the hemoglobin production has to change, your bicarbonate buffer system, it has to alternate itself. There's so many things that have to change in order to accompany that higher level. And this is speaking on a physiological perspective. We're not speaking of your surroundings. We're not speaking of what's connected to you. And as you elevate, it does, what do they call? Isolation leads to elevation. And one thing I've learned in this journey is that God will remove people before he elevates you. But when God is putting you in an elevator season, there's a time when you're elevating and you're going, and mind y'all, I'm just flowing with the spirit, whatever God's telling me to say. So none of this is planned. When you are in an elevator season in your life, because God always elevates his children, but sometimes it's like a staircase. So it just seems like things are going slower, but you're still ascending higher in the things of him. But when you enter a elevator season, where you hop on the elevator for a couple seconds and all of a sudden when you step off this elevator, you're in a new realm, you're in a new level. Before you step on that elevator, there are some things that has to be removed first, and God does it with such a speed. And why did God do that? Well, one, God did it obviously because these people, they can't be a part of this season of elevation for you. And like I always like to say, it's not because people are bad. I used to think it was because people was bad that God was removing them. It's not always because people are bad, in the sense of they're not good people, but that connection could be toxic for you in your next season. So you're not a bad person. You're not even a toxic person. But my destiny, my purpose, where God is taking me in this season, me being connected to you is toxic. So as much as I would love to kumbaya and rejoice over the fact that we've been friends for 10 years, 15 years, 13 years, I have to let this go because this no longer serves my Father's purpose in my life, right? And so, another thing though, that this removal of people shows is the subtleties of God. So we're always looking for that loud voice that says, let them go, remove them, pull them away, right? But one, when you're in an elevator season, God just snatches people out. Like I said, one day they're there, the next they're gone. But one thing I noticed, every single person that has just disappeared, that's what I'll call it. There was a subtlety. What do I mean subtlety? There was something very subtle about that person that I felt like God was saying, but I couldn't, I didn't go further into it or anything like that. It was like every person that was removed, it was like, oh, I knew you were going to be removed. Because of that subtlety, all of a sudden, something that was a little like, that was really quiet, but you kind of picked up on it, it became very loud when the removal occurred. So one, God always reveals things in time, right? But also the other thing is that your spirit was already speaking to you. So I'm not sure if at those times God wanted us to remove people, right? But because God will remove them when it needs to be, right? And other times he will encourage us to do so too. But especially if you have trouble following the voice of God and doing what he tells you to do. All out of nowhere, I just feel like this. Not heaviness, but the presence of God. And so the other thing is that these subtleties, it amazes me how the subtle things become so loud when that transition occurs. It's like, oh, I knew all along that you wasn't going to be here the whole time. And so a lot of the times you can't be surprised when God removes people either because you already knew, right? And so for someone that's sitting here wondering, you're going into this new year in the Gregorian calendar, you're going into this holiday, whatever it is, right? And you may be wondering why you are alone. Well, one, elevation is close. If you have not already been elevated, but I'm speaking for people that have already been elevated. And if you feel like you haven't, check in with your spiritual self because you may be higher than you think. But that may be struggling to understand why people were suddenly removed. We speak about removals all the time. But what I noticed was when you're in a season of restoration, when you're in an elevator season where God is not playing with you, where it is your appointed time, people will not want to say drop like flies, Lord, I'm not trying to kill nobody, but people will, God will just remove them. And it'll happen so fast. It's like almost overnight. I kid y'all, I've never experienced this before. I've experienced the process of people being removed, like a slow thing. But this year, within the last 4 or 5 months or something like that, I've experienced just waking up and never talking to a person again. And it's amazing to me how God will move in that situation. Like I said, these people aren't bad people. You can't be connected to me in this season of my life called elevator, called elevation. More than enough. And oftentimes what I noticed was God will give you people. It's like, oh, thank you, Lord. As quick as he removes, is also as quick as he replaces. I've experienced that. I'll share that testimony one day too. And I believe God does this because he gives you people that can stand with you in your wealthy place. He gives you people that can stand with you in that promise. You know what I mean? He highlights those individuals to you. And what I noticed was, it's not even because these people, like I said, are bad. A lot of them are still in the wilderness and you left them behind. And you may not look at it that way because you can still pick up the phone and call them. You can still whatever. But because like your transition from out of the wilderness into the promised land or into this wealthy place, it was like wealthy being more than enough. It was such a sudden transition. God had to suddenly remove people. Does that make sense? So all of this ties back to it being a sudden removal from the wilderness, because these are people you have to leave behind. That's not to say they won't always be in the wilderness. No, but it's not their time to come out just yet. And I mentioned this before in a video where there was someone that was really trying to attach themselves to me before I came out here to LA, and I could sense it in the spirit. And God gave me a very disturbing dream at night to kind of make it very clear that I needed to stop communicating with this person. And I listened. I always listen when it comes to that, because I don't have time for, no, I don't got time for that. So as I had listened to God though, what God showed me was like a map and their paths. Because we were like, I'm not trying to get too many details because this person may see this video. So anywho, they were on a path where heading similar directions, but they're in the wilderness. And I was headed to the land of promise. Different mentalities, different levels of consecration, different levels of responsibilities, and a level of toxicness, because people that, I don't want to make people that are in the wilderness like seem horrible or anything. No. It's not that. I'm just saying it's like God, he wants to protect all that he's put in you, because if you are heading into more than enough, but you are connected in a toxic way, or if you're connected to people that, you know, are like, well, God, like, you know, still complaining and this, that, and the third, that's going to be toxic for you, because God needs your eyes to be on him. God needs you to trust him. God needs you to know that he's going to provide. God needs you to know that you went from one way of provision to have a multiple. Does that make sense? So it's like God wants to set you up for your best and your next. But as long as you continue to be connected to people because, oh, we've been friends for a long time, or oh, this, that, and the third, you're not bringing anything, like you're not starting new in your new. You know what I mean? It's like you're starting on an old slate. So that's why God has to remove, because at the end of the day, he loves us just that much that even he himself, he's going to step in and be like, daughter, I'm going to go ahead and remove these persons. And like I said, restoration is indicated by speed. This happens so fast. And so I'm not sure who this word is for. I'm not sure who this word will impact. But God says slow down. Somebody made it to this point. And God just wants you to slow down. Like, you trying to move too fast. Just slow down. But anywho, I don't know who this word is going to be for, like who it's going to encourage. But it was just I was about to go into worship, like just praising God in the midst of how I feel about things, right? Praising God, no matter the circumstance. And it was just a reminder for me, like, God had to remove people. He had to remove them. And we can't mourn the loss. If anything, you need to be celebrating the fact that this is your new beginning, because the old things have passed away, and that includes friendships, relationships, and things. It's passed away. And it wasn't by your doing, it was by God's doing alone. It's not like the person, like I said, I keep reiterating that because sometimes I feel like we vilify people. Now, I ain't gonna say there ain't some people that don't need to be vilified, but work with me, Lord. We vilify certain people that just don't, like, the connection just isn't good for you no more. And so as you walk into this new, as you are in this new place, I want you to keep that in mind, that God needed to do this, okay? But I just feel like I'm just like endlessly talking. But it's kind of like a sleepover, right? Sleepover with Sunray, because ain't it like, yeah. It's like 1:27 in the morning. Probably about to go walk Jade. And then I'm gonna make me some breakfast because I'm hungry. So I'll talk to you guys later.